Hi, everyone. How are you today? Hope every one of you is having a fantastic day. Welcome to LUAN Live Sessions. Hope every one of you is doing fantastic. I want to give you a big warm welcome to our new series, Life is What You Make of It Love, Trust, and Change. Accompany us to a kind of series to explore the intersections that make life wonderful and give yourself a chance to examine your journey. As poet and writer Sherry Moraga once quoted, I am fool enough to believe that storytelling matters, that metaphors make spirits sing, that only art can convince us in its brutal complexity, in its myriad contradictions, and its nuanced portraiture of love, that we, as human beings, long for meaning in our lives, and that this longing ennobles us. With this reflection, it is our great honor to welcome so many art professionals and change makers from around the world joining us in today's edition of Life is What You Make of It. Luan, international curated experiences that connect beauty, truth, and ethical reflection, bring inspiring voices from the intersection of art, ethics, and mindfulness into the lives of individuals on all continents. We're going to play a very short video about Luan.
How many times have we been told that it's wrong to feel? How many times have you walked and ignored the landscape? It's time to stop and think about what we can do today to change tomorrow. To realize that as long as the sun goes down and comes out again, there is an opportunity to make a change. Because if we can dream of a better world, we can create it. Let's explore beyond what we can see at a glance. Let's make our inspiration, imagination, and creativity the main elements of the world we want. Let's analyze our decisions and discover what drives us to go in a deep state of reflection that provides us with tools to create good day by day. May the freedom to play and the empowerment of our individual and collective ethics guide the way, feel, believe, and create. The change we're waiting for depends on us. LUAN, Emotional Museum.
Thank you, Ceci. This series is about life is what you make of it love, trust, and change. And it offers an interactive platform to encourage resilience, meaning, and collective conscience through diverse artistic practices. Let's question ourselves and share the quest for the answers we seek together, finding ways to unlock our deepest potential through art exercises, deep reflection, and sharing them with others through artistic experiences. Before introducing today's distinguished speaker, I would like to briefly share some speaking requests to help make today's session more interactive and engaging for all of you who have joined. At the bottom of the screen, you will see a control panel with a chat. Please go there now and write your name, country of residence, and your organization. In the control panel, you will also find the questions section. You are encouraged to engage directly with other panelists by posting a question for them in the questions box. Please have in mind that you need to select the option Send to all panelists and attendees for everyone to see your post or question. Please submit your questions as early as possible in the session, as there will be a limit to how many can be answered. Before we start, let me introduce myself. My name is Marion from LUAN Emotional Museum. I want to thank you all so much for being here today with us. I see in the chat box that we have people from all over the world, and this is very, very exciting. It is my pleasure to welcome today to Maxwell Kangkolo. He is a Berlin-based storyteller, filmmaker, and poet who will take us on a journey today to discover how we can harness the power of story for creating more meaningful connections, finding our purpose, and harnessing the power to transform our lives. He believes in the idea that the world changes because we give ourselves the freedom to imagine new possibilities. He operates on the philosophy that we need to have a passionate pursuit of progress and not perfection. Maxwell has spent his career working with companies and individuals to tell better stories. He is currently partner and creative director at Telescope Studios that is focused on creating, building, and sharing stories that have impact through film. He has worked with some of the world's leading brands to enhance their storytelling, marketing, and branding as a former director at IXDS, Germany's leading innovation design studio, and formerly head of marketing and branding at Garage by Inoji, a global design studio of one of Germany's largest energy providers. In today's session, through Stories We Steer Our Stars, an exploration in the art of storytelling, we will explore how stories are the building blocks of our DNA. Every story is the beginning of a conversation with ourselves as well as with others. Each of us are living stories, though we cannot fast forward through the tough scenes or the mundane ones or pass button to living inside joyous memories forever. And this is our greatest challenge to make meaning of the moments in between the frames, to find and create the great plot woven beneath the surface of our lives. This craft of storytelling goes beyond works of art or entertainment, but we can harness these tools to use them as agents for our personal transformation. Our ability to storytell as species has helped us in reshaping the world within us and the world around us. So, how might we use the power of story to make our lives tales worth telling? We will discover the science behind how stories alter our thinking and, as a result, the way we engage with the world. We will explore through play how we can craft stories as a method for connecting with each other. We will learn what skills and tools we can use to make our lives more story worthy. I encourage you today to be curious, to explore, and to enjoy this experience. Let's have fun together and let Maxwell work his magic through this enriching experience. Maxwell, please take the stage. Thanks so much for being here today with us. It's truly a pleasure.
Hey, hello everyone. Grateful to be here. Marian, thank you for the very kind introduction. It's a real pleasure to get the opportunity to kind of share a topic that I'm very passionate about with all of you. And just I think the main thing to explore today is this idea of story, but also how we can all kind of play and interact and really learn from all the people here today. So really excited to get the chance to share a little bit about storytelling, share my own perspective, but I think there's a lot that we can learn from each other also in this conversation. So thank you for having me.
Our pleasure, Maxwell.
Great. So I will take the stage for a second. Give me 1 second. Hopefully everyone can see this. But as Marianne mentioned, today I wanted to share a little bit about the art of storytelling. Through play and creating, we can use this power of story to harness our own expression of how we want to live in the world, but also use it as a tool to like put the things into the world that we really believe in. So today the kind of topic is through stories we steer our stars. And basically what that means is each of us is our own kind of star. And to get to where we want to go, we can use this power to be able to shape the people that we are and the environments that we're in. And so with that, we'll kind of get into things. So maybe Marian, if you'd like to guide us in a small meditation.
Yeah, sure. My pleasure. So I encourage everybody to sit, straight on your chair or in the sofa or wherever you are right now. If you can have your back straight, so you can have a better flow of energy in your spine. Put your hands comfortably, whatever you feel. It would be in your knees, or it could be below your belly. And then kindly close your eyes, please. I encourage you to breathe deeply. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. Inhale and exhale. I encourage you to keep inhaling and exhaling deeply. And focus your attention on your breath. Make sure you are inhaling for enough time and exhaling deeply. I encourage you to visualize your lungs expanding wide, 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 wide as you inhale, and exhale. And focus your attention on your breath. Make sure you are inhaling for enough time and exhaling deeply. I encourage you to visualize your lungs expanding wide, 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 wide as you inhale. And exhale. And focus your attention on your breath. Make sure you are inhaling for enough time and exhaling deeply. I encourage you to visualize your lungs expanding wide, 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 wide as you inhale and contract as you exhale. I encourage you to bring your attention to your toes, being aware of how your toes feel. Now bring it up a little bit to your feet. How does it feel? Bring your awareness to your feet, all the way up now to your knees. How does your feel? How does your knees feel this morning or this afternoon? Then bring your attention all the way up to your legs. Now bring your attention all the way to your hips. Now bring your attention all the way up to your belly. At the height of your navel. How does it feel? How does your tummy feel today? Now bring your attention all the way up to your chest, to your lungs. How does it feel? Now bring your attention all the way up to your heart. How are you today? Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you encouraged? Are you tired? Everything is valid. Then bring your attention to your throat. How does your throat feel today? Do you have any tension there? Now bring your attention to the height of your mouth. You can open your mouth widely and move your jaw. Then bring your attention up to your nose. Now to your eyes. All the way up to your forehead. And then bring your energy and your attention all the way up to the top of your head. And keep on inhaling and exhaling deeply. Inhale and exhale. Now you have awareness to almost every part of your body. And whenever you feel ready, bring your hands all the way to the front and start shaking them. Shaking them. And relax. Bring them down, resting to your lap. Did you feel any difference? Do you feel your hands moving different? Inhale and exhale 3 more times. One last time. Inhale. And exhale. And bring your hands again to the front and shake them. And rest them on your lap. And whenever you feel ready, open your eyes at your own pace. How did everybody feel? Did you get more awareness on your body? I hope you guys did.
So much, Marianne. Hope everyone's centered and feels very awake and tuned in for the conversation today. So I wanted to start with just kind of setting the frame. So, one of the things about stories when we think about it is that we live in a world made of it. And, if I look at my own life and when I was a kid, one of the things that I loved to do as I was kind of playing in the sandbox is I would just imagine this world. I was really passionate about dinosaurs. Maybe some of you were as well. But I imagined myself as this like architect, and every time I would play in the sandbox, it was me creating these jungles or forests and all of these creatures, and I would live inside those places, and that would bring me so much joy. And now as an adult, I look at my mother actually runs a child care center, and one of the great things when I go home is being able to see children still use that ability to create these worlds, create these stories, and really live inside them. What does that mean for us? I think one of the interesting things that I've learned is that we live in a world that is made up of stories, and so I wanted to share with you all as we kind of got into things. One of my favorite videos that kind of gives us context of ourselves and the stories that we're in and how they always interact with the people around us. So I'll play this and then we'll keep going.
Sonder. You are the main character. The protagonist, the star at the center of your own unfolding story. You're surrounded by your supporting cast, friends and family hanging in your immediate orbit. Scattered a little further out, a network of acquaintances who drift in and out of contact over the years. They're in the background, faint and out of focus, are the extras. The random passersby, each living a life as vivid and complex as your own. They carry on invisibly around you, carrying the accumulated weight of their own ambitions. Friends. Routines. Mistakes. Worries. Triumphs and inherited craziness. When your life moves on to the next scene, there's flickers in place, wrapped in a cloud of backstory and inside jokes and characters strung together with countless other stories that you'll never be able to see, that you'll never know exists, in which you might appear only once, as an extra sipping coffee in the background, as a blur of traffic passing on the highway, as a lighted window at dusk.
And so that's a piece from John Koenig. He makes this amazing series called Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows that explores creating stories out of words that that we can use to redefine how we experience and express ourselves. So the reason why I love this topic of storytelling so much is because a part of what I do in the everyday is helping people tell better stories that can have impact, that can shape their lives. So I work as a partner at Telescope Studios. We focus on telling stories that have impact with film. one of the things that I see in my everyday work is the value and importance of stories. And if you look back at who we are as societies and people, the way that we interact with each other, one of the oldest art forms we have is storytelling. What storytelling helps us do is it helps us create a way of sharing what's happening in the world within us and the world outside of us. And so stories are a pillar of the societies that we've built. You can see it in religion, you can see it in education, you can see it in different parables. And so when we start thinking about how do we actually craft stories, it's something that we have as almost an innate skill. And so a lot of my work, as I work with filmmakers and creatives to construct these, you'll see that there's different parallels. There's different threads and pieces in a good story. And so I hope to share some of the experience that I've had working with a variety of different brands, leading marketing efforts, but also in my current role as more of a kind of creative director and partner to shape these different compelling narratives. So that's a little bit about my background. I've done a lot of things outside of filmmaking, but now I think with all of those different experiences, I think I can hopefully give some kind of insight into this artist story. So the real question is, why do stories matter? Stories are a building block of our DNA. So every story that we have is a conversation between ourselves and other people. And I wanted to start with a little story from my own life. And to kind of give us context on what this tool can do. So I grew up in a really small town, a place called Shelby, North Carolina. And when I was 10, my parents decided that we were going to move from Shelby to Raleigh, which is kind of the biggest, not the biggest city, but it's a bigger city and the capital of North Carolina. And so when I made that transition as a 10-year-old from this very small community where I felt very seen and I felt like I belonged, I moved to this much bigger city for me. And finding a place that I could belong and felt comfortable, it was starting over. And so I started a new school. And so my parents, had worked really hard. So they're very middle class. But the school that I got districts to was very fancy. So I found myself in a whole new environment where, I didn't look like everyone else. I didn't dress like everyone else. And I felt like I didn't really know how I fit into this place. And so my first year in school, I was so miserable. I had a few friends, but I was constantly getting made fun of. And every day when I woke up, I was just, I got made fun of on the bus, got made fun of at school. And so it was exhausting. I remember at the end of that first year, just being like, if this is school, this is my life here, I really don't want to do it. And so one of the things that I resolved myself over that first summer that I had was that I was going to become someone else. I was going to be someone that people liked. I was going to be in kind of the cool kids group or whatever that place was, where I would always look over and see all these other people like laughing and having fun, and I was like, I want to be there. So what I crafted for myself that summer was a new identity. So I created a character, and his name was Max. My full name is Maxwell, but I created Max. And what I had noticed over that first year is that there's very specific cues. There's very specific ways that people dress, talk, interact. And I built all of those things into this character that was Max. And when I showed up the next year, every time I would prepare myself for school, I would almost step into this character. And this character, Max, had different mannerisms. He was confident. He could talk about all of these different things. And when I went into that character, I felt so comfortable. I felt like I was someone else. And it gave me this kind of power. And so that next year was much different from my first year. All of my friends changed. I was invited to places. People wanted to sit beside me. It was very enlightening, and I was amazed that I could harness this power of transformation to impact my life in this way. The second half of that story is, as I changed myself, I realized that not only if you create characters, is that a powerful tool in kind of molding your change, it's very important what kind of character that you create. And so one of the things that I notice is that as I change and the people around me change, my habits and behaviors would impact the old friends that I have. And those people had accepted me for the person that I was. But in this new story, those friends didn't have a place. And I was really disappointed. I was really disappointed in myself and the person that I became. And I ended up having a lot of like anxiety issues. I ended up having a lot of self-hate issues. At one point I tried to like bleach my own skin, which was like crazy adventure. But this story and character had really taken over my life. And I felt like, as I reflected on that, how I had used that story and how I'd used this character, I felt like there was a lot of stuff that I could learn that was less damaging. And I've since taken from that experience a lot that helps me navigate what stories are important to tell, and also like understand, looking at your environment, what stories do you actually want to be a part of. So what kind of the big takeaway in that part of my life was, you can internalize stories, but it's really important to be conscious of what stories that you create and that you want to participate in. And so what I thought to kind of kick things off was just to have a first activity, and think about, what are some of the favorite movies or books that we have? What are some of the favorite movies, our favorite characters from those books and movies? And so in these discussions, we kind of explore more kind of the playful side of things of how we create characters. So we'll be breaking up into groups of, I think about 4, if that's right, Ceci, and then we'll discuss these 2 questions. We'll have about 10 to 12 minutes to do that. So we can hop into.
Amazing. Please, everyone, remember to click on, you're going to see a button that says join. So please click it so you can join the breakout rooms. It's important. If you don't click on the join button, then eventually you cannot be with other people. Just as a reminder. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you had an amazing experience in the breakout rooms. We're waiting for Maxwell. He should be here in a minute. Does anybody want to share what was their favorite movie in our group? We had Soul, the one from Disney. We had the Shawshank Redemption. We had Eat, Pray, and Love. And we had as well The Beautiful Green. That was in the group that I was in. But I don't know if you guys would like to share movies or books that you enjoyed. There's Maxwell. Hi, Maxwell. Welcome back. You're on mute. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Fantastic. So if everyone feels like they want to share their favorite movie with other people, please feel free to put it into the chat. Hopefully that discussion was lively and you got to know each other and also a little bit more about yourselves. The reason why I think it's important to kind of think about, what is our favorite movie and these favorite characters, because in reality, what we're doing is we're creating our own movies. We're creating our own masterpieces in a way where those characters and that arc, that plot, it's yours to design. And so the exciting thing about the lives that we're living is that we can simultaneously be a character in our story, but also sit in that director's chair and be able to reflect and see, based on where we are and what we're doing, does this still fit with the story that I want to tell? So whether it's around work, your relationships, your legacy, the best stories are the ones that are actually yours. And so kind of a story that kind of illustrates that from my own life is, and when I at the end of once I got to college, a lot of the things that I learned from the world that I was living in and the environment really pushed me towards this idea that I needed to find financial security. And a lot of that came through the identity that I had with work. And so I had this whole story that one, work had to feel terrible, and two, money was the most important thing to being fulfilled. And so I ended up going into finance. I was an investment banking analyst. I majored in finance. Then I went on to work as an investment banking analyst. And I spent 2 years in that. And as I was kind of working in finance, I really, really struggled, because what I ended up being faced with is that this didn't feel like the life that I wanted. And I would try as hard as I could to fit into this and make it make sense to me, but I was just so miserable. And I look at people who are 10 years ahead of me, and we're also kind of in the same industry or same company, and further ahead. And I was like, man, is this what my life is going to be like? And as I asked myself that question and reflected on it, I was like, this doesn't feel like, I know what I learned and I was taught, but this doesn't feel like the right life for me. And when I opened my story up to say, hey, what could I be? Like, where could I find my place, or a place that I belong? Because I didn't feel like I really fit in this kind of finance industry and this culture. That allowed me to kind of explore and take chances with my own story. And so I think sometimes when we're looking at the stories that we're living, or the lives that we're living, it's important to also put in this question, like, is this my story? Does this feel like something that I'm writing? Because in reality, every day we're kind of writing another page in whatever that, whether it's a movie, whether it's a book, and it should be you as the author. But we're always influenced by the world and environments that we're in. So kind of my big takeaway from that part of my life was that I needed to be able to question and also reflect and also feel what it was that I was living in. Did it feel like something that I wanted to do? And so that was how I kind of went through that part of my life. And so the next kind of step of that, do you believe in your story? Because people can tell, when you don't. And so I think some of my biggest, a lot of us in the room, we come from a variety of different backgrounds. And I think the authenticity of which we tell our stories, it impacts the kinds of interactions that we have, our abilities to connect with people. Every time we're able to craft a story that's authentic, that has emotion, that's why things like, parables, or in religion, there's so many stories, because, when we're able to kind of translate those feelings and expressions, it allows us to connect with other people. So, my biggest failures have come in my life when, like, I was telling an authentic story. I remember I was working at this fintech kind of startup, and I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and I had this whole life that I had created that I thought I had wanted for myself. So I had moved to LA, and there are still parts of me that felt like I would be good enough if I had a certain kind of title, certain apartments, certain relationships, and that would help me fix my own self-worth issues. But the reality that I was confronted with, I would be in these places or spaces. At the time, I was dating someone who was in entertainment, and I would be in these different spaces. And I thought that as I talked or conversated with people, one of the things that I in the separation of these conversations, I would reflect on those kind of interactions and who I was being and the story that I was telling, and it just felt so fake. I felt fake, and I didn't believe in this identity that I had constructed. I was not great at the job that I had. I was not great in any of the relationships. I don't feel like I was the best friend or family member, and I think there was this friction between the idea of what I wanted to be and I think where I needed to go. But my fear was, why I clung to this identity of being this kind of person, was that I didn't know that there was anything else. And it's a very scary thing to give up what you thought you wanted, to have to be creative and explore and see what life has to offer. And so the step in leaving that, leaving that life and the identity and the role was giving myself permission. And so, I had to feel like I was good enough first, and then I could do all of the other things. And so what I was really passionate about at the time was more around kind of the marketing and branding and storytelling. And so there was an opportunity to leave LA and pursue that kind of that piece of my life, which was very scary. It was in Berlin, and I didn't really know anyone there, and so I had to give myself permission. And when I did that, I think that was the first step, and that led to a lot of other things. So I think there's such importance and value in actually believing your story, and if you believe it, others can feel it. And then that'll actually allow you to connect with people in a much more meaningful and a much more authentic way.
It's being authentic to yourself, no? Like
exactly.
And in your truth.
Living that thing that feels real to you. Mm-hmm. And that allows you to have those kind of interactions and engagement that you actually want in your life. So what I wanted to kind of progress into was talking a little bit about the stories, going to an activity that focused on a couple of things. So there's stories that we tell ourselves, and there's stories that the world tells us. And in kind of these smaller groups, I would love to kind of talk a little bit about what stories do you believe? And when I say what stories do you believe, it's more about like kind of the person that you think you are. So hey, I identify as a filmmaker. I identify that there's possibilities in the world if I work hard enough. That's a story that I believe. If we go to the second question, what stories do you believe in the world around you? I believe in the power of people to come together to progress towards like idea or process, and I believe that there's power when we do that. So there's kind of two layers. So there's the stories that we have with ourselves and the stories that we have about the world around us. So in smaller groups, we're going to conversate a little bit about those two topics, and then we'll come back together as a group to kind of explore that a bit more.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you had an amazing experience. Hey, Maxwell.
Thank everyone for taking the time to kind of share a little bit about your experiences in terms of the things that you believe about yourself and the world. If you feel compelled, you can always type those into the chat. The reason why belief is such an important ingredient in any story, if you look back, I love to study history. And one of the things in the 1960s in the US, it's that we lived in basically in the 50s and 60s within a very, very segregated country. So you had leaders, civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and a variety of others who really advocated for this idea of equity. At the beginning, when they were telling this story, this whole idea of I have a dream, why that's such a powerful tool that's used in society is because when you create these stories or dreams, his whole I have a dream speech was structured around this idea and place and story that didn't yet exist, but had possibility and potentials. And when we actually assign belief, when we step into that story and think, hey, this could be possible, things in the world around us change. And so that was the 1960s. Now it's almost 60 years later, and we're living in a completely different world, right? That all started as a story, as a dream, as a concept or idea. And what we can actually do when we assign our belief to something that's possible, we put our attention there, it will shape the world around us. And so that's why it's so important to tell the stories that you believe in, that you feel passionate about. Because when you do, you'll find those people that you can connect with to create that possibility, that vision, that reality. Just in my own life, my uncle, he's 90 years old. And when he was 15, he had to flee. He lived in Texas at the time, the segregated South, because there was someone threatened his life. And he spent the next 20 years of his life living on as like a Navy sailor, and he sailed around the world. And he was telling me, like, when he was 15 or 16, the world that I'm now living in as a 30-year-old, he never would have imagined. He wouldn't even have thought it to be possible. And as I talked with him, someone who's lived through this history, I can see what a difference, this belief that things can and the world can be different, it can make. So if we look at all these different groups, LGBTQAI, people of color, women, all of these groups have made such progress over time. And that's as a result of the stories that we tell. So it's really important, the things that we believe in. Even though it's hard, we might not see how it can be possible. Assigning the belief and really taking that step can really help us in terms of transforming ourselves as people, but also kind of the world around us. So that's why, I thought to share a little bit about what that can be used for. And to follow that up, picking the right supporting cast. So it's so important to, all the best movies that, obviously we talked about and shared, they're only great movies if the actors around them are able to also deliver on those kind of scripts. And so if you don't have those actors, it's not going to deliver the same kind of impact as a viewer to the audience, and also convince you that this is real. And so one of the things that I found in my own life is that the people that you have will largely impact the quality and experience of your story. When I was in college, my first year in college, I had I trying to find myself, as I'm sure everyone is in their first year of college. And, I just had the first year I had terrible friends, awful friends, just people that it's great to have a good time with, but really any kind of depth of interaction and this other side of myself that I personally had neglected is why I found myself with a bunch of people that I didn't really feel like I connected with, but hey, it was a good time. And so as that first year came to a close, the big insight that I had is man, if I change these people, maybe I can feel better and I can have different kind of discussions and conversations. And one thing that I took upon myself was hey, if I'm going to change, it's also takes the people around me to give me input, to give me feedback, and I can do the same for them. And so I set out to kind of find more interesting people. That was the baseline, finding people that I really thought were interesting. And when I made that change and I looked for those kinds of people, I ended up finding myself with completely different friends who were quirky, who were different. It was a wide variety and very diverse group. One of the great things that that helped me develop myself was more comfort with my own voice, more comfort with my own identity. I had a lot of issues with how I looked, but since changing those people around me and finding that I could just be myself, whatever self that I chose to be, and these people would accept and support me, it gave me courage to do other things in my life. And so I say find the right supporting cast, because if you have those people to go with you in this journey for life, you can go so much farther. And so the big takeaway from that was, there's this African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So find those people that you can go together with. The next thing is, it's okay if your story changes. That's totally normal. This idea of experimenting and play, and one of the things that we talked about at the beginning was that life is this creative process. It can be playful. In my life already, I've changed careers about 5 times. And every time I was about to take that step, what I did was I realized that every time we have a conversation with someone else, it's us telling a story. And so, when I wanted to get into film, one of the first things that I did was I started every conversation, every conversation an opportunity to kind of explore your story. So people would ask me what I did. At the moment, I was focusing more on marketing, branding at an innovation consulting studio. But I switched that. I say, hey, look, I'm doing this documentary. At the time, I was working on a documentary project. I'm a filmmaker working on this documentary project with some friends. And when you structure your story in that way, it actually gives people the opportunity to, one, help you become the thing, because every time you introduce yourself as whatever the thing is, you're giving yourself permission to step into that identity. So if there's changes that you want to make in your own life in a professional sense, I found using conversation is a great way of giving yourself confidence, because as you start to believe it, you know, it'll help you make that change. And so as I introduced myself more as a filmmaker, as I was trying to progress into this area, that's actually how me and my business partner met. That's how we got our first projects. And I was actually able to take that step. But it all started kind of first with me saying, hey, I want to make a change. I believe this is something where I can move towards. And then structuring that in conversations and my interactions to actually be able to get feedback from the world. And I experimented with that story too. Like, it wasn't, you know, as I kind of described myself and the things I was and like to do, that also allowed me to say, hey, does this still fit? Or maybe this doesn't. So you have the ability to change and shift things. And it's up to you to kind of be creative and give yourself freedom to do that. So I've seen it in my life. That's been a very helpful tool to experiment a little. And so to kind of transition into kind of our final activity before we open things up for questions. If you're looking at your life from this moment on going forward in time, what does the perfect ending to your life story look like? So, you know, if you're writing this amazing movie, you know, you have, you know, access to all the actors as the director sitting in director's chair, what does the end of your story look like? What does the rest of it look like? So we're going to hop into groups and talk about that a little, and then we'll come back together at the end. Hey, so welcome back, everyone. Hopefully that was helpful in terms of just, you know, exploring, you know, how we envision our lives kind of playing out. The reason why I love this question so much is that it helps give us perspective on what we're building towards. And so every time we look at our stories as a progression, like, you know, from this moment in time, I'm pushing something into the future. You can use this question as a way of coming back to, from where I'm at, does that story still fit? Does it feel like it's something that feels authentic and real and true to me? Do I feel like I'm making progress towards those things? And if it does, then it's great to know that, hey, you're building towards something. And if it doesn't, it often offers us that moment of reflection where we can start exploring what new choices that we can make to get to that, you know, move towards the places that we want to go. Someone once gave me this great analogy that, you know, life is both simultaneously being like being a director and an actor in your own movie. So what's great about life is that at any time you can kind of sit in that director's chair and look at what you created, you know, with the supporting cast, the whole story that you created, and like, is it something that you want to participate in, right? And I think our emotions oftentimes give us the feedback to figure out, hey, what places are we in? Does this character feel authentic and real? And then we can live inside that. We can lose ourselves, and then you know, if we need that time to kind of you know cut. You know, you need a cut. All the actors take a break. You need that time for reflection. You can always take that time and space to say, hey, I can change this story at any time. You know, you have that agency and you have that power in your story. And so I think, you know, when I think about this question, I always, when I'm reflecting on my life, I use this as a tool of figuring out if what I'm doing makes sense. At the times in my life where I was really way off, I would look to the future and like, yeah, this doesn't feel like it fits. And so then I would say, hey, I need to change the cast, or I need to change the story, and feel like I'm more aligned with what feels right. So hopefully that can be a useful question as you explore life. And I think with that, I'm happy to open it up for questions. Hopefully those were just a little bit of what I find can be very useful in the art of storytelling, both in our lives and from what I learned in my work. And then, yeah, can answer any questions that you might have.
Amazing, Maxwell. Thank you so much. We have a few of them that they sent. Here's the first one. What elements would you recommend to become better storytellers? Like regarding structure, what techniques can people use?
So I think that the biggest thing that can be helpful in telling stories, if you're telling something, if it's a film, it's one style of storytelling. If you're doing something podcast, and so the audience matters and the medium matters. I would say that the best way to tell better stories is tell stories that you know that are personal. I always find that the best stories that you tell are your own stories, because you don't have to guess, and there's not so much that you have to learn because you were there. And I think that's one thing that I've learned, that, you know, when you're trying to connect people, go to the stories of your own life. And it also, what that allows for is that, you know, when we share our stories, we're vulnerable, and we're the main actors in those. It also allows people the space to connect with us. And so I find like that's a really useful tool that I've learned for telling better stories. And then I think the second part would be make sure it's authentic. Like, tell a story that you actually like, because when you tell stories that you like, it doesn't have to necessarily be your own. Those emotions are what people gravitate towards. So if you're happy about something or a situation, like, it makes the story that much better. So I'd say use personal stories and tell stories that are connected to emotions. Hopefully, emotions that you enjoy.
And what happens if, for example, someone has a very broad audience? So then you cannot, no, because it depends the storytelling to the audience that you have. But for example, what happens with a movie producer, or what happens with, for example, some teachers or some speakers, no, that they have a very broad audience with different backgrounds.
Yeah, so even if the audience is broad, what you're looking for is a point that's relatable. Every story that you tell, people are like, you know, you have the storyteller and the person who's receiving the story. And so a story is effective if it connects with someone. The reason why we tell stories that are very personal is because people want to relate to things. Even if you have a broad audience, people are going to relate it to things that have happened in their own lives. And when they can, they're like, oh, or they can identify the feeling, then it has an effect. So I would even say there are very common things in the human experience. A lot of those are around emotions. And when we can feel those emotions, even if it's a broad audience, it makes it very personal and it makes it very relatable. So we're going for situations in which people can relate to that. And if you are too broad, then you risk missing everyone. So I would say find the things that people can relate to. And often those come from different identities. Like, we can all identify with being sons or daughters or mothers or fathers. Like, those are characters that we know. And so that's where the relatableness comes from. It's finding those kind of points of connection that makes it very personal for people.
Yeah. And another question here from Sarah. She's asking, so you become a better storyteller by connecting with emotions. Do you see a difference between connecting to more negative emotions, like, you know, fear or vulnerability, negative by this, because we're all humans and we all have them, no? Or connecting to, you know, positive emotions such as, you know, joy or, you know, other positive emotions?
Yeah. So for me, there's no value judgment on emotions. Emotions are just emotions. There's no positive ones, there's no negative ones. They're just emotions. And the great thing about emotions is we all have them. We've all been fearful. We've all been happy. We've all been sad. And so great, you know, there are great sad films that you've seen that made you feel a lot. There are also very happy films that you've seen that made you excited. It's more about what effect are you trying to have. I don't think we need to characterize, like, you know, the kind of emotion, but know what you're trying to communicate. If you want to communicate something happy, then you need to build a story that comes from a place that, oh, you were happy, right? Or it's a situation that captures that. If it's a sad thing, then you have to go to something that's sad. And so finding what that emotion is, finding a story that connects to it, that allows us to you know, create those connections or relationships with people.
Wonderful. And we're going to touch the last question. And what elements would you recommend for people to be more in tune with their authenticity? How do you know it's actually the right story or the true story you're telling yourself and it's not someone else's? Especially for empathic people.
That's a good question. How do you know, dude?
Could it be, for example, I
authentic.
don't know, meditation? It could be therapy. It could be, I don't know, different types of self-awareness or creativity or.
I think that what I found around authenticity is that you're being authentic. Like you'll know when you're being authentic or inauthentic. When I was, I worked in a variety of different places. When I was younger, I think or different friends that I have, I would know when I was trying to be someone.
Mm-hmm.
I think the great thing about being authentic is you don't have to try. And so if you feel like you're trying to perform for someone or you're trying to put on something, that's a good clue that you're being inauthentic. If it feels very natural, if it feels like it's something that comes through you, I feel like that's a kind of a good check. Mm-hmm. Where the tools that I practice to help me be authentic is different kind of journaling, meditation. What I find is that brings me out of kind of this thinking mind and more into a much more clear place where I'm not trying to get something out of someone. I'm just trying to share. And I feel like when I come from that place, it's real. It's much truer than if I'm trying to convince someone of something. It's a different feeling. And so I think using those tools for reflection, I think gives you a different space for how you show up in conversations. And then I think with the authenticity, just kind of check in with yourself, like, what am I looking to get out of this? And how does that land? So hopefully that answers the question, but that's a really good question.
Well, amazing, Maxwell. We have more questions, but we're running out of time and we need to wrap up. We're going to share Maxwell's contact information so you can follow up, directly with him. And thank you so much, Maxwell, and everyone who has joined this session today from around the world. We had such an incredible community here today. People are connecting from Mexico, the USA, European countries, India, Sri Lanka, Philippines, Pakistan, Kenya, Rwanda, India, and many other countries. We encourage you to follow us on Instagram and YouTube for the latest news. And please feel free to answer the feedback form. All kinds of suggestions are more than welcome and help us deeply improve. Our next session will be next Wednesday, March 24th, same time as today, with Italian professor of sociology of cultural heritage and tourism at the Niccolò Cusano University in Rome. He's the director of the master program in museum, society, and cultural heritage, Maxiano Melotti. He works on the uses and reinvention of the past, myth, and archaeology in present societies, and on the relationships between cultural heritage, globalization, and consumption in postmodern society. In next week's session, The Goddess and the Influencer, from Botticelli Venus to Cara Ferragani, we will explore Botticelli's birth of Venus and Primavera, how these two are wonderful tributes of life, change, and movement, and Venus, the goddess of beauty and love, rises from the sea among gentle breezes and foaming waves. Then, in a flowered garden, she inspires spring and beauty. These paintings have become emblems of Italian Renaissance and over the centuries, global icons. Cara Ferragani, on the other side, is a world-famous fashion and lifestyle influencer with more than 20 million followers on Instagram. Some months ago, she was chosen by Vogue Hong Kong for a photo shoot inside the Uffizi. The web was flooded with photos of her in front of Botticelli's Venus, a very effective image mixing and overlapping ancient Greek mythology, the Renaissance idea of beauty, and contemporary society with its obsession for shopping and fashion. This is a good starting point to reflect about cultural change. How has the concept of beauty changed over the last centuries? What's the difference between Greek goddess, a Renaissance girl, and a modern influencer? We will explore which idea of life, sexuality, and femininity we have today. But also, as this photo shoot was realized inside a museum, how has our idea of cultural heritage and museums changed in the last decade? Click in the link that we share in the chat to register. Thank you again. Have a fantastic afternoon, great evening, and a wonderful rest of the day in whichever part you are in the world. Stay safe and stay healthy, and see you very, very soon. Thank you so much, Maxwell. It was a pleasure to have you here today with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Everyone have a wonderful evening.
Have a fantastic day. Abrazos.